day to you, sir. Ivy Nation Sports Talk, up and rolling. He's Jesse Stiers. I'm Sean Stiers. Sporting I don't know if that's a new hat that you've got on.
No, I just haven't worn it in a while.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought maybe I'd seen it before, but at least it's been a long time since I have seen it.
I always try to match. I just got home from work. I have this dark purple shirt on, and I was like, what matches dark purple? Black. So that's the route I went.
I can't even tell that's purple. They both look black to me.
That was the point, I guess, because it's like green doesn't really go with this dark color. Navy blue doesn't go with this dark color. So
it is we in, we out day. It's becoming a tradition here on Thursdays on IB Nation Sports Talk. I believe this is the third Thursday we've done we in, we out. And as always, all of the we in, we out questions are submitted by our Irish Breakdown subscribers to the Champions Lounge, the new Champions Lounge. There, we put a thread in there every week, and subscribers can put it, give us their we in, we out questions, and we answer them on the show. Very simple format is the way it works. We have a lot of other things we're going to hit later in rapid fire as well, including the surprise announcement today. Deanna Gump, Notre Dame softball coach, announcing her retirement. We will address that later in rapid fire, as well as a lot of Notre Dame things and NFL. We're going to kind of go all over the board when we come to rapid fire later on. Are you ready for we in, we out, Jesse? Want to do
I
this?
am in on we in, we out.
All right, and away we go. First one from Domer Grizz. Viper is the biggest question mark on the defense heading into fall camp. Will Jordan Botelho finally reach his potential? Will Boubacar Traore be consistent enough to overtake him? And can Junior Tui Alamaka contribute anything at all from that position? We in or we out on that? There's a lot there.
Okay, so I guess let's start with the Viper question. Is it the biggest question mark on defense heading into fall camp? I would say yes and no. It's 50-50 for me, but it leans, I guess, maybe 60-40. It leans more so towards Viper. The middle linebacker spot is a question mark for me just because, yes, I know that there are studs there, Drake Bowen and KBA, but it's still – neither of those guys have started a game at the Mike linebacker position, and it's, the most crucial position on the entire defense. And so to me, it's still a question mark at middle linebacker because of you have guys who have never played before. I get it. There's a lot of talent there, but at least Botelho has snaps under his belt. He has games under his belt. Whether or not he's performed how you want him to, that's a different question. So I would have to say that Mike linebacker and Viper are the biggest question marks right now.
Yeah. Hold on. Slow down. Because I know you want to keep going here. And I kind of agree with what Salty's saying. For me, the in out is just whether Viper is the biggest question mark. I mean, because of like the specific guys that he mentions, it's a question mark because you have a bunch of guys who haven't really produced yet, specifically Jordan Botelho, because the experience he has, but he hasn't produced. The other guys are inexperienced, but we've at least seen flashes from them in practice. You say middle linebacker is the biggest question to me, and I get that because of the inexperience that you have and what you're losing with JD Bertrand. So that is going to be a question, but I do. The fact that Drake Bowen at least got a little bit of experience last year and he has a year in the system, I think that's going to help him quite a bit. Like with what you're talking about at middle linebacker. To me, the bigger question is until we know for sure the health status of Benjamin Morrison, to me, that's the biggest question that the defense has. And then I would put Viper behind that. What kind of production are they going to get from Viper? And then I would put middle linebacker behind that. What do you think about that?
So I'm not saying that losing Benjamin Morrison isn't a big deal, but I think when you have Jaden Mickey and Christian Gray behind him, it's not as much of a question for me. Like, is Benjamin Morrison, probably an All-American if he plays the entire season and a first or a top 20 draft pick?
Yes.
More than likely, yeah. And so I don't think there's to me, maybe the best way to look at this question is talent-wise, what's the biggest question mark? And even when you lose Benjamin Morrison, I still think the cornerback position is very talented. And that kind of makes me kind of think about my answer a little bit because, again, Drake Bowen and KVA are really talented. But the question mark lies, can they actually go out there and perform as a first-time starter? Would I like to see more out of Viper? 100%.
Yeah.
I think the biggest question mark talent-wise is definitely at the Viper position. I don't see a ton of talent at that position right now. And I hope kind of, as this question kind of alluded to, can Traore be consistent enough to overtake him? I don't think it would take a lot to overtake him. I think if you play with a high motor every game, give maximum effort, I think, mistakes are naturally going to happen. But I think if you play harder and show more effort than Botelho, I think that's ultimately what's going to get you on the field at the Viper position.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that at all. Tommy says you're underrating Morrison with your comments.
Again, he's uber talented, but there's still a lot of talent at that position. If Botelho went out, I don't know.
No, that's true. How concerned would you be if Botelho went out? But you're very concerned if Benjamin Morrison's not playing. I think that's Tommy's point. Right?
I got you.
So DK says we in, we out isn't supposed to be asking questions. He's technically right. You're not supposed to actually ask the question. It's kind of like Jeopardy. You're supposed to sort of phrase it, in the form of a statement. Yeah, as the answer to the question, and then ask us if we're in or we're out on that. That's a good point. That's a very good point on that. NCAA 24 will be the highest income grossing video game in history. This is from Ramcray75. We in or we out on that? This is an easy in for me because it's been away so long. There are so many people who are pining for it, and it's going to cost so much, apparently. With the price of inflation. It's kind of like when you hear about all these movies, setting box office records and stuff like that. Well, of course, a movie in 2024 should be grossing more than a movie in 1980, right? Because even if you adjust the 1980 film for inflation and all that kind of stuff, it's still, where ticket prices are. It's not going to stack up quite as much.
I'm going to have to say, I think that this question should be the highest income grossing sports video game in history, because I just did a quick Google. In the top 20, there's not one sports game. It's a lot of first-person shooters or Mario type games. So I'm going to have to say we out for this question, and I would have to say we out even if you said top video game, because FIFA, which is the professional soccer game, essentially, I would take that over NCAA 24 just because NCAA 24 isn't popular in Brazil, but soccer is, you know what I mean? Soccer is popular worldwide. I just think the soccer games are more worldwide, and the NCAA football is, obviously very centrally located in the United States. You might get parts of Germany and the UK and stuff like that. But
okay,
soccer games, I would say, would reach everyone. So I'm going to say we out.
And look, I'm just kidding. Andre says it's on his Father's Day gift list. I'll just say I'm just completely out on the whole video game hype. I'm just I know I'm an old fart and I'm past that, but I'm just I would play, if there was a teenage kid in the house and back when you used to have it, whether it was Madden or college or whatever it happened to be, I would play it if it was in the house. I'd give it a shot, but I don't have a gaming system. Haven't had a gaming system in the house in a long time, actually. Did you even have one in high school still, or were you past that by the time you got to high school even?
No, I had an Xbox in high school. I didn't really play it that much, I was just busy. I had school, had football, had baseball, had friends,
lady friends.
There was just a lot to go. And at the end of the day, video games weren't necessarily, on my mind. I just had a lot going on.
By the way, hit that like button if you would. We would appreciate it if you would help us out just a little bit. with that, as we continue to roll on We In, We Out Thursday here on the show, I was a little bit surprised to see this one. I'm going to be quite honest, and I'll answer this first. This is from Domer123. Emil Wagner starts at left tackle. Charles Jagasaw starts at right tackle. We in, we out. I am definitely out on that because Jagasaw is going to be the left tackle. The battle is going on the other side of the offensive line between Wagner and Baker. And
okay, let's flip it then. Jagasaw left tackle, Wagner at right tackle.
As of right now, I'm going to say no. He came out of camp clearly behind Tosh Baker at number 2, with both the weight, and just some technical things that I think that he has to work on. Can he make up some of that ground potentially on both fronts by the time training camp starts? He could, but as of right now, I'm going to say Tosh Baker is the guy. Tosh is definitely, especially for the season opener. So I'm not going to say Emil Wagner doesn't overtake him, but Baker's got a lot of experience. You're going to go on the road. I think that you're going to want as much experience as you can get, assuming that he's playing at a level that you want him to play at, a level that you think is acceptable. If Wagner's outplaying him, then you go with Wagner. But from what we saw in the spring, Wagner was not outplaying Baker. So I'm sticking with Jagasaw at left tackle and Baker at right tackle for now.
Yeah, I'm going to say we out. I think if the offensive line shows some continuity issues or lack of synchronization, and specifically that's centered around, Tosh Baker, I would obviously have to say we in, but like that's you can't do a we in, we out question based off of stuff that you're waiting to happen. That's kind of the point of the we in, we out. So you're kind of forecasting the future. So I'm going to say we out. But before we move on to the next question, what do you think of this idea? Even if you're not getting the video game to play, would you potentially think about getting one to just never open, kind of like a baseball card or like an autograph or something like that, right?
Because not a bad idea. Little investment, the first one back and forever, and like
it's going to have a lot of value, I think.
Yeah, and they're going to have different editions, like they've got the deluxe edition or whatever. That's not a bad idea. Actually,
I'm not going to lie to you. I'm very seriously considering it after reading this comment. Like, I might literally just buy it and never open it, or I might sell it to someone for like double the value or something like that.
Yeah. Joe says, do they even sell hard copies? I mean,
I think they do, but a lot of he's not wrong. In a lot of the new like systems, everything's just like a digital download.
Instead of. Yeah.
And it downloads straight to your PlayStation that's got a hard drive in it, or Xbox that's got a hard drive in it. So I'm sure they're going to have physical copies, though. I'm sure.
Well, and having the physical copy, if that's the case, if so much of it is digital downloads these days, that would make the physical copy even that
like
more
imagine you get that game and you get Quinn Ewers to sign it and he goes on to win the Heisman.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that's some good stuff right there.
Right. This one is from DMND 13. Notre Dame will have at least 40 sacks in the regular season. We in, we out. They had 31 sacks this past season. 40.
Shoot.
I'm saying 40 is a big number, especially because they're playing 2 service academies this year. I like them.
That triple option, you got to factor that in.
Yeah, like that. Now, obviously, if they win a couple of playoff games, that gives them more opportunities. But I'm going to say they add a handful more than what they had last year at 31. But I'll just say regular season, 12 games, I'll go out on this. Not quite to 40. Because, look, Viper's a question, right? Like, Viper was a question last year. They got modest numbers from the Viper position in terms of sacks. They got a lot of sacks from other places because of all the blitzing and what they were able to do up front with the rest of the defensive line. But yeah, so I'm gonna go. I'm gonna be out on this. I don't think they get to 40.
I think that this should be regular season. And I'm assuming 31 included the bowl game last year. I'm like you. I think you have to compare similar sample sizes. So I'm going to say in 13 games next season, they will not get 40 sacks. And I'm saying we out because I believe that I just don't see a clear upgrade with RJ Oben and Jordan Botello as your replacements for JBB. And who was the Viper last year? It's slipping my mind.
Patello was a Viper last year.
Oh, so yeah, I just don't see. I think Riley Mills and Howard Cross would have to have extraordinary years in order for Notre Dame to get close to that record. And I'm going to be quite honest with you. I don't necessarily see, Al Golden's defense, I don't really think is designed heavy on sacks. I think it's designed heavy on pressure. And if you get a sack, great. But I think their thing is more so let's get the ball out of the quarterback's hands. Like what you saw with Caleb Williams.
Bring pressure, make the quarterback make mistakes, those kind of things.
Yeah, and so like it's hard because of that reason. I don't think Al Golden's defense is so, heavy. We need guys coming off the edge that are constantly getting sacks. I think they just want to get pressure and force bad throws, knowing that they have probably one of, the best secondaries in all of college football.
Well, I think it was Jadarian Price who was talking about it this spring because he was talking about getting his third down certificate, and part of that is pass protection, obviously. And he was saying, the Notre Dame defense is so hard to be able to tell where the blitz is coming from, like who the blitzer is on any given play.
Yeah.
And that, that's part of what makes them so successful, obviously, is their ability to do that. But it's also what can take some guys a little bit longer, maybe, to kind of figure out.
And so, like, if you look at a play and, Notre Dame is notorious for maybe bringing a safety blitz or a corner blitz or, a rover blitz off the edge, some sort of like 5-man, 4-man stunt that has some sort of wrinkle to it. And again, even if the ball comes out of because the quarterback a lot of times sees that guy flying in out of nowhere and they just get rid of the ball. To me, that's just as good as a sack.
Yeah.
Right. And so, like, even though that you're not getting the sack tally or the sack number, I'm okay with that. Like, I don't think that this team needs a ton of sacks in order to feel productive on defense.
They had 31 sacks and they had 49 quarterback hurries on the season. So that's a pretty good number. 49 divided by 13. What's that? Like around almost four more pressures per game in addition to the sacks that you get per game. I'm going to save this other one from DMND13 because someone else combined his question about the points that the defense is going to allow up with another question, and DM has a few other questions in there anyway. But he also says Notre Dame will have at least 2 games this year where the defense / special teams outscores the opponent by itself. We in or we out on that one, Jess?
Let's see here. I don't think that happens against Texas A&M. I think you could potentially do it against both MAC schools.
Right.
I don't think it's going to happen versus Purdue and Louisville.
Right.
I don't think it'll happen against Stanford and Georgia Tech.
No.
I don't think it'll happen against Navy and Army.
Really? Now, just because they don't throw the ball enough, they
don't throw it, and they don't really fumble the ball a lot. The only time you're getting them because they're going on 4th down and you get a 4th and 2 stop. Like that's the kind of turnover that you're getting against most of those service academies.
But the special teams,
yeah,
part of that as well.
I'm not going to bank on a lot of punt return or kick return type touchdowns. So I'm going to have to go. I'm going to go with we out.
I'm out on it. I think they'll do it once. I think
that's
they'll do
where
it
I'm
once.
at too.
Yeah.
And to me, that you got to look at like what if you want to make a comparison to how a game flow would look like. Just go back to the Pittsburgh game last year. That's the perfect game. I mean, I think they had like an interception return for a touchdown. They had a punt return for a touchdown. And then the defense held Pittsburgh to like no points, right? Like that's the type of domination that we're talking about. So I think 2 is the perfect number, like in terms of like if you did it over under 1.5, because I do think they're going to get 1 against one of the MAC schools, and then I think Virginia and the second MAC school would be the possibility for the next one. So it's like out of those 3, I think that's where you're at.
I concur. Ballpeen Shillelagh says the 12-team playoff format will not impact bowl game viewership, but will impact non-playoff bowl game player participation. We in, we out.
We in. I think that you're going to see viewership go up because the games are going to be, marketed and advertised as
Look,
a
sports
big
wagering
game.
is a thing. I think that drives a lot of the viewership for any of those games these days, regardless
I
of if
think
it's a playoff game.
The counter side to that is the more important games that you add, and this group of players who aren't in. I think that's like the threshold. Well, I didn't make this, final group of 12. I have a great NFL grade. Why do it? And so I do think you're going to see less participation in the non-playoff games.
Yes, for sure. All those things you said, I completely agree with. I think the viewership will remain solid. They don't get huge numbers for those non-playoff bowl games, especially, the lower tier, and they're all basically going to become lower tier, but they still average somewhere, anywhere between 1 million and 2 million. And again, those are basically about giving them content in the month of December. And because almost anyone, with the exception of still just a few states, really, I guess still a majority of the states, but a lot of states have legalized sports wagering. And with that continuing to rise in popularity, that's going to drive a lot of the viewership because people are going to place their bets and they're going to watch those games as a result to see how they play out. Clear Screen 25. Cookies should be soft and chewy, not crispy and crunchy. We in, we out on that.
Oh, we are in. If you like crunchy, hard cookies, I think that is a huge red flag, and I'm ultimately I'm judging you right away. 100%.
I would say I'm in the middle on this because I like, especially like if it's chocolate chip cookie or a peanut butter cookie, I like a little texture on the outside, but I do still want it nice and soft in the middle. That's how I like my cookies.
So I think the ultimate question, like the test for this question would be, have you ever had the Chips Ahoy where you have the chewy and the soft and the hard ones, like the ones that are?
Oh yeah. See, I don't like the crunchy Chips Ahoy by any means.
That's what I mean. I think
that's the kind of cookie I don't like. Yeah,
right.
Completely agree with that.
Can't do those.
Yeah, concur. From Eric Irish 24, Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love will total over 2,000 yards receiving and rushing this season. We in or out on that? I assume we're combining them, right? This isn't like 2,000 yards each. Combination of the 2,000 yards. This is an easy in for me because I think Jeremiah Love is going to run for at least 500 or 600 yards and also have somewhere in the vicinity of 300 to 400 receiving yards. So that would be that's right around 1,000 right there. And I think Jadarian Price is going to push 1,000 yards rushing and also have, 200 or 300 receiving yards to go along with it. So for me, I'm definitely in on that.
Okay. I think that oh man. So like roughly if you did Love to have 50 rushing yards and 25 receiving yards every game, he'd be at 900 total yards.
Okay.
I think he'll be a little bit better than that rushing in some games. I think Love ends up around 1,100, maybe 1,200 combined yards, and then can Price make up the rest straight running after that? I'm just gonna have to say we out. I think 2,000 is a great number for this, and I think it's gonna be like literally like 1,900.
Ooh, well, so you think they're going to be that close?
Sloppy Joe
makes a good point. Like does Riley Leonard take some yards away with his own legs potentially?
Ooh, I like this. I don't know if he'll have this type of season. I more so like the comparison of running backs. I think that those two guys are very similar.
Jadarian Price and Josh Adams. Yeah,
Adams.
I think that's definitely a good one as well. So let's look at last year. Estime ran for 1341. Love ran for 385. So that's 17, a little over 1,700 yards with the rushing. And then from a receiving standpoint, I'm going to look at Love and Estime both again. Estime had 142 receiving. Love had 77. And obviously, you're not going to have a big bruising Estime type when we're talking about Price and Love. So I'm sticking to my guns. I think that they're going to combine for over 2,000 yards.
Do you have a paper, that notebook nearby? I want to write this one down. I think this is like a fun one to remember.
Okay. Love, Price, combine for 2K yards. Jesse? No. The right one? Yes. Got it. Salty chiming in. Salty with one of his salty questions. Jaden Osberry will redefine excellence at Viper once he hits his stride, using his athleticism and intelligence to turn Viper into a kind of second Mike linebacker position, enhanced by his ability to communicate telepathically with the king. We in or we out on that. So he's basically saying that Jaden Osberry, instead of playing Rover, moves over to Viper. And because of all that athleticism and excellence that he has, that he will redefine that Viper position. Sorry. Go ahead.
We are, first and foremost, that position would never play like a Mike. It would play like a Viper. And I'm just going to have to say we out. Jaden Osberry does not have a body built by a Viper. He is 210 pounds. Patello's about 250, maybe 260. He's not thick enough. He's not built to be in the trenches. He's not built to go up against, these big tackles from Florida State and USC and Texas A&M. It's just, could he have success against the MAC opponents in Virginia and the service academies? Sure, I would hope so. He's an athlete at a very gifted athlete at a very good school, but against the teams where you really need production and a true Viper, I just don't think he would cut it.
Yeah.
So we out.
He's just too undersized to play that Viper position. There's just no two ways
Salty is
around
mad that you are not showing this image.
I showed it. I scrolled it down. He says, show this. It's taken from Osberry's Twitter X page and tells you all you need to know about his approach to the game. Got this panther with the eyes, the scary eyes of Jaden Osberry. I mean,
he's hunting.
He's going to be great, but it's not going to be at the Viper position. Okay, I got to correct a little bit of Joe here before we do this question. His question or his comment, Riley Leonard will beat Notre Dame's single season record of total offensive yards. So we in or we out on that. Now, he had Jarius Jackson as the record holder, but I looked it up to make sure that we had all the numbers. Brady Quinn is actually the current record holder. The yards to beat is 4,009. Jackson is currently in 9th place with 3,217. Everett Golson is second with 3,728. Jimmy Clausen third. Ian Book. Brady Quinn again for 2006. Deshaun Kaiser again in back-to-back seasons 15 and 16. Ian Book again is 8th, and then Jarius Jackson is 9th. So the number to beat here is 4,009 yards by Brady Quinn in 2005. You in on that for Riley Leonard this season?
Ooh-wee, ooh-wee, ooh-wee. So I'm starting. What's hard about these we in, we out questions is you're not prepared for them. And I'm a stats-driven guy, and
You are a stats-driven guy.
I'm trying to kind of quickly.
You're a stats-driven guy with a day job, is what you're trying to say. So, like, you didn't have time. You didn't have time to do your show prep. I will tell you.
Yeah, you go ahead and lead us with this one. So I'm researching right now.
Riley Leonard in 2022, 2,967 passing yards and 699 rushing yards. So that adds up to what? Around 3,600 total. A little bit shy of 3,600 is what he did in 2022 when he was fully healthy out there. So that's his high water number so far, 3,600 yards. Can he get? So, like, if you're gonna, if Jarius Jackson actually was the record holder, I would say, yeah, Riley Leonard is going to bust right by that this season. But yeah, that's what DJ is saying is about what I think that Riley Leonard is going to have, around 3,000 passing, 750 rushing in that ballpark. So I would say 3,800 would be the ceiling for Riley Leonard for me. What do you think?
This is a very, very, very good question. So I kind of looked at Drew Pine's stats. I looked at Sam Hartman's stats. And then I'm kind of extrapolating here for Riley Leonard's stats. Drew Pine threw for 2,100 yards. And I think that he only played 10 games. Sam Hartman threw for last season about 2,700 yards. And I felt like he underperformed at the quarterback position.
Mm-hmm.
I think that his passing yards, a good number to land on, is probably 3,200. And then rushing, I think, could be anywhere between 400 to 800. And so if you take the max of 800, that's going to get you right to 4,000.
That's a bingo.
And so I don't think he's going to get that many rushing yards, though, because that would mean he's getting close to like 50, 75 rushing yards a game in order to get like 800 on the season.
DK says he's over 4,000. I know you're talking through this still. Now, we do have to factor in playoff games because those will count toward all these totals, however many playoff games they end up in. Now, in most of these cases, there was a bowl game involved. Like for Brady Quinn, there were bowl games involved both seasons. Yes, and again, Josh, if you maybe didn't hear the whole thing, Brady Quinn is actually the record holder. And I'm not trying to like call out Joe for not having it, but Brady Quinn is the actual record holder with 4,009 yards. It is not Jarius Jackson. Jarius is in 9th place right now. I'll take it off the screen so that doesn't confuse anybody.
I think he ends at about 3,800 yards. This is another really close one.
You've talked a lot just to come back to 3,800 yards.
Yes. The rationale is there.
When DJ said 3,000 passing, 750 rushing, and I said, yeah, the ceiling's around 3,800 yards.
Yeah, but I'm not just going to blindly agree with you. I have to go through my own.
I'm not saying you had to agree with me, but you could have just agreed with me.
Yeah, but that's no fun. I got to go through my own logic here.
Right. Okay, from 3rd and 7 duo. Mike Denbrock's offense will average over 40 points a game, and Al Golden's defense will allow less than 20 points per game. We in or we out, and he says Notre Dame will lead the country in scoring differential at plus 25. Now, the other question earlier was will the defense allow under 20 or under 15 points a game? Because I think 20 is a lock. They allowed 15.9 points per game, and they scored like 39.2. It was 39 points, a shade under 40 last year. So did they go over 40 and under 15 offense, defense? In or out on that?
I'm in on that because I think the offense should be good. And also, everyone, including myself, you brought this up. Obviously the offense scored a lot of points because the defense was getting a lot of turnovers and putting them in advantageous field positions. pick sixes, all of that stuff. I think that happens again this season. Maybe not to the same degree, but I think that's offset by the Notre Dame offense being slightly better and more production this season as well. So
Right.
I'm going to have to say we in on that.
I'm going
and the
in
schedule.
as well.
I feel like the schedule is much
Yes.
easier this season.
Yes, exactly. I mean, said it a million times. Texas A&M, USC, Florida State, Louisville. Those 4 games right there are the 4 toughest games. And I just think that with what they're going to, the fact that they're playing 2 MAC schools and 2 service academies alone, I mean, they might not they might not give up 20 total points in those 4 games combined, and they might score over 50 points in each of those 4 games.
Maybe what's crazy?
What's
you
that?
Wouldn't have said that 5 years ago with Brian Kelly at the helm.
No, you wouldn't have.
Remember all those MAC games at like Ball State that was close, and you know what I mean?
Toledo,
both. I think both times Toledo. If they played Toledo twice, I know they definitely did the one time. It's just like that's such a refreshing thing to say.
Yeah. So I think the defense or the offense will score more than 40 points a game, and I think the defense. Again, we tweaked this based on the question that we had earlier about scoring defense. I think the defense is going to hold teams to below 15 points a game this season. I think it'll ratchet it up. And like, your thing about the interceptions, again, Benjamin Morrison plays into that, but having Xavier Watts back there sure does help the way with his knack for the ball. D-Troll Hunter. The Cowboys win their division. We in or we out on that? I went through the schedule when I saw this question this afternoon. I've got them at 12-5. I know there are a lot of doubters, and they've got to play the NFC North, and they've already got a first place schedule and all that. But I'm hesitantly in, as still as beefed as I am about the offseason that they've had. I'm not convinced. The Eagles are their closest competition, and I'm not convinced in them as a legit contender this year. So I'm going to go in, I think. I'm hesitantly in on this.
My brain says out, but my heart says in. I say out because there hasn't been a repeat division winner in the NFC East since 2003, 2004 when the Eagles did it. It's basically just been the Cowboys lose it, and then they win it the next year, then they lose it, and then it's like this constant rotating cycle. So for 20 years now, you haven't had a back-to-back NFC East winner. That weighs on my mind. The Cowboys are going through defensive change. I think the Eagles have a lot of talent on the defense, and they drafted some corners. That's going to help them out a lot. I really, this comes down to one position, in my opinion. Who plays better, Dak Prescott or Jalen Hurts? And so I'm going to have to say we in because Dak is a far better quarterback than Jalen Hurts, and he's a new father in this world. And
you just talked yourself into it.
In a contract year where Dak just had a baby, I think he's going to have an absolutely monster season. So we are in.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I mean, you got him and CD both in contract years, basically, even though they'll probably franchise. They'll probably I guess they will franchise Micah Parsons most likely. So never mind on that. But DK, so they are both in contract years. DK says the NFC North is going to go in and out on Dallas. You'll be happy to know, DK. When I went through that schedule that I was talking about and trying to predict what I think their record is going to be, I do have them losing to the Lions, and I have them basically splitting their games against those NFC, or I guess he says NFC North. I was thinking AFC North. I have them splitting their AFC North games, basically. D-Troll Hunter, Oregon is Big Ten champs in their first season.
Ooh, Let me make sure I'm looking at the new Big Ten correctly. I just want to make sure I got all the
Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA.
It's going to be between Ohio State and Oregon. I'm going to say we in because I think Ohio State, both teams are going to need to figure it out at quarterback. Bo Nix left, and then obviously McCord transferred to Syracuse. And I think Oregon did a really good job in the portal. They didn't lose their head coach. I think there's a lot of momentum to build off of. I think they're a little bit hungrier considering they lost both times to Washington and fell just short. So I'm going to say we in.
Oregon has to go in terms of their long road trips this season. They go to Purdue October 19th. They go to Michigan November 2nd. They go to Wisconsin November 16th. They host Michigan State and Ohio State, and they host Washington to close the season. I'm going to go out on this. They're fortunate that they get to host Ohio State. Who knows what exactly Michigan is going to be with a new head coach and a new quarterback and the change that they've had. But I'm going out on Oregon as Big Ten champs. I think the schedule is going to be a little bit tougher than what they had to play last year, especially, you're replacing Bo Nix and new, great point, DJ. Lanning hasn't beaten any team the caliber of Ohio State. Exactly right. And Ohio State, Ryan Day, they pushed their chips in with NIL. They're in good position this year. So I'm gonna stick with boring old Ohio State to win the Big Ten. Another one from D. Troll Hunter. Jason Onye being an impact player this year at defensive tackle. We out on that.
We in on that. I'm actually big on Jason Onye. I think Riley Mills is naturally going to need some breathers, and I think Jason Onye is going to really capitalize on that playing time. I think by the end of the season, and this isn't to take anything away from Riley Mills, I think Riley Mills is a tremendous player. I think you're going to start seeing a conversation of 1A and 1B, and Riley Mills passing off the baton to Jason Onye by the end of the season.
I'm definitely in on this. I think you're exactly right. He's going to continue to develop behind Riley Mills and be able to give him some good reps there. And I've talked a lot about the fact that in those third down situations, in passing downs, they're going, they're what they practiced this spring is subbing in Onye for Howard Cross at nose guard as well, to give him basically a front line of pass rushers in those third down situations. So I am in on this, and I think that Onye is going to make some pretty big strides on the interior defensive line this season. Hesburgh Mafia. Lincoln Riley will leave USC in the next 2 years, but before that, Ryan Day will leave Ohio State. We out on that.
Leave Ohio State or get fired from Ohio State? No, Lincoln Riley's staying where he's at. I think so too. He's just the thing with Lincoln Riley is he's always going to get the QB stud, and I think that's enough for him. You know what I mean? Like, it's, of course he wants to win, but I think as long as he's got his stud quarterback, he's going to sit there and continuously try to compete over and over again. If Ryan Day struggles, especially if they don't beat Michigan for some reason this season and next season, I do think that he's more on the hot seat than people kind of realize, because, at some point when you're at a program like Ohio State and, the proven track record of success that's come before you with Tressel and Urban Meyer, it's not enough just to be 10-2, make the college football playoff. They want championships in Columbus. And so if he doesn't win a championship in the next 2 seasons and he's losing to big rivals and that sort of situation, I do think that he could be out the door.
Yeah. I don't think Lincoln Riley is leaving in the next 2 years. I don't think Ryan Day is leaving Ohio State before 2 years. So I don't see it happening. I see Ohio State having a good year this year, winning the Big Ten and being a playoff team. But you're right. Like, sooner or later, they're going to have to start being in that national championship conversation again. But I think that they probably will be this year. So I have to be out on this one. Jess, I don't know how close you've followed this NCAA settlement. We in or we out on the settlement? Do you want me to kind of like rip off some of the particulars on this? Basically, the settlement says that the NCAA is going to provide more than $2.7 billion to former athletes over the next decade for back damages related to NIL restrictions that the NCAA imposed. Basically, the NCAA would not, pass any legislation allowing named athletes to use their name, image, and likeness for money. The conferences also agree to a system that's going to allow schools to pay roughly $20 million a year in permissive revenue sharing to athletes. Their direct payments, and they would begin not this fall but next fall. And by doing this, they avoid going to trial, where the NCAA has basically never had much success. When it gets that far, they've lost at almost every turn. If they had gone to trial and lost the full damages, they would have had to pay over $4 billion rather than the $2.7 billion. So you in or you out on that?
I'm going to have to say we in, and the thing that really caught my attention was the revenue sharing. I can't believe the NCAA makes all this money off of the schools and the universities, and that money isn't basically put back into a pool to, do more for the athletes, do more for travel accommodations, do more for maybe facility upgrade, whatever the institution wants to do with that money in that sport particularly. It's just wild that there's never been any revenue sharing, because it's just been, it's been a greedy cash cow, essentially. At the end of the day, the NCAA has found a way to make money and not share it with anyone else. And so for that reason, I'm going to be in, because I think it's good. It's basically like, so the way I look at it is the schools are kind of like the NIL in this deal. They are getting their share of the cut for, on behalf of the NCAA, for bringing in all this money for the NCAA because of their name, image, and likeness. So I like it for that reason.
Yeah, and I didn't get too deep following any of this, but the bottom line is it just means that there are going to be more opportunities for the student athletes to make money. Look, the Pandora's box is already open with NIL as it is. So I'm fine with it. Like the revenue sharing, I know is not something that the schools, the conferences are really fond of, but look, these TV contracts are worth billions of dollars, and they're worth billions of dollars because of the student athletes who are playing in those games. So they deserve to have their fair share of that, especially with everything open right now with NIL. Last question, in or out on Virginia Tech this year, finishing in the top 3 in the ACC. I'm sure you haven't paid too much attention to Virginia Tech, Jess, but they were 5-3 in the conference last year. They've got a favorable schedule this year in ACC play: Miami, Stanford, Boston College, Georgia Tech, Syracuse, Clemson, Duke, Virginia. I don't think they'll be, what was the question? Top 3? I don't think they'll be top 3, but I see them probably in the top 5 anyway, based on the schedule that they've got. So I'm out on top 3. I'm in on top 5. Nothing to add?
No, they were 5th last season with a 5-3 mark, like you talked about. They do have a favorable schedule at the end of the day. I'm going to have to say we in, because I think Florida State's going to be ahead of them. And then I think Clemson. Is Clemson really going to be down again? So I got Florida State, Clemson, and then I think Virginia Tech, Louisville, and Georgia Tech duke it out for that number 3 spot. I'm gonna go with we in.
Could Miami sneak in there?
That's what I mean. Is Miami going to be resurgent?
Yeah.
I'm not buying Louisville's success in year 2, by the way. I think that they did a really great job last season, kind of piecing together, the quarterback, Plummer, the new coach, they had a running back that ended up getting drafted, I'm pretty sure. Like, they had good pieces there. I don't see them repeating. I do see Clemson and Florida State good. So yeah, I think that they're going to fall right in that 3, 4, 5 range. But I'm going to go with we in, because I think it's, after kind of the top 2, I think anything can kind of really relatively happen after that.
Sean Kelly snuck one in earlier in the chat. This I don't technically count this as an official we in and we out, but he says live pregame show from Notre Dame Stadium. And we're going to have to be out on that, because there's no way it'll ever happen because there are, there are rights fees and, places, like that's not going to happen. They're never going to allow us to do a live show from the stadium over there. Kevin wants to know if Jesse was in or out on Top Gun Maverick. As long as Jesse actually shows up for tomorrow's show, that will be a topic. We'll be talking about Top Gun and Top Gun Maverick tomorrow in Rapid Fire. So that's in the works. You going to be here? That's the question.
I'll think about it.
Sean Kelly also thinks we'd be good to drink a beer with. Now, are you still no beer? Is that where you are right now?
Yeah, I haven't drank beer in a while. I would do it on a special occasion. You could definitely give me a Sprite and a vodka, and I'd feel just as fine.
Yeah. Crack a cold one. Doesn't matter exactly what the beverage is, as long as there is a cold beverage out there. I think that's for sure. Jesse, are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. Fill in the blank. There are 100 days until Notre Dame football kicks off the season at Texas A&M, and you are blank.
I am not overly excited yet, and I'm not overly excited because, listen, we're still 100 days away. We're not even into June yet. We're not even into fall camp yet. I have the NBA, conference semifinals, the NBA finals that'll be coming up. I am deeply invested into the Cubs already. Like, I got enough stuff to get me by. And I'm not saying, that it doesn't – I'm not passionate or excited about Notre Dame. I'm just not passionate and excited about it right now. You need to get me about 30 days before the season starts, about a month before the season starts. And that's when I'm good, I'm just not overly excited yet. I got to see fall camp. I got to see more of Riley Leonard. Like, it's just not time yet.
Yeah, I'm content starved. That's what I am. Because it's late May, man, and there's been so little going on since spring football ended. It feels like it's July. It's hot outside like it's July already, and it's like there's nothing happening. There is no news. There is sparse little bits and pieces here and there. Basically, nothing happens in July, and that's what it feels like.
We got the Olympics this summer.
Yeah, but that's 2.5 months from now. I'm talking about right now. That's why I'm content starved. I need something.
I don't care about your content starvation. I'm talking about all the stuff I got filling up my schedule.
I know you're not worried about it because you don't have to come up with the content every day for each of the we do these shows every day, and we've got 40 something shows between now and the start of training camp. So something needs to happen. Is all I'm saying. We need some stuff to talk about. I'm a little offended by this comment from Sloppy Joe, by the way. He says I look like a wine connoisseur. That is
that's the furthest thing away.
So far from my thing. I am actually, especially now that summer is here, I am a craft beer connoisseur. There are a lot of craft breweries in our area, especially in southern and southwestern Michigan. There are a lot up there, all the barley growing and hops and all that different kind of stuff. And there's a couple places over in Elkhart. So much more a craft beer guy than wine. If I'm forced to, if I'm dragged to a winery, I would do some of that. Bourbon, you know me, Jess. I can't handle that.
Really, the only hard liquor you drink is vodka. I was just getting ready to say, get this man a little vodka, get him a little cherry Diet 7-Up or maybe a little lemonade, and you'll have a good time.
That's right. Nice, smooth, good summer drink. The vodka and a little whatever mixer it happens to be, but not on the wine. Scale of 1 to 10. What chances do you give both Notre Dame and Florida State to be ranked in the top 10 when the Seminoles visit the Fighting Irish on November 9th?
I definitely think Notre Dame will be in there, so that's already a 10 out of 10 for me. You start looking at Florida State's schedule and some potential losses that they could run into before Notre Dame. Really, the only one that is a glaring maybe is Clemson, and if they even lose to Clemson and they go into the Notre Dame game at 9-1 and Notre Dame is 10-0, I still think there's a strong chance that both of those teams will be in the top 10. So yeah, if Florida State has 2 losses, it's definitely a no. I think their only loss might come to Clemson. That's a 50-50. So I'm going to have to go with, I'm an 8 out of 10 on this one.
You're going 8 out of 10. Like, I was looking at Florida State's schedule, and they do have an interesting stretch. They're 4 games before Notre Dame, and you kind of hit some of them. Clemson on October 5th. They go to Duke. They have a bye week after that, and then they go to Duke. Then they're
Duke
at
just
Miami.
lost its coach and quarterback.
Right.
They're irrelevant.
But still, yeah, that's true. But then they go to Miami, rivalry game October 26th. Again, is Miami going to be resurgent this year? Like a lot of people think. Miami and Nebraska are becoming the new Texas. Like, is Miami back? Is Nebraska back? You know, it's like, I'm sorry, but Nebraska, you're still sub 500, regardless of the 15 coaches that you've had over the last 18 years. You know, it's like, I'm not going to buy Nebraska back. I'm not going to buy Miami back, but Miami, Florida State, that's still a huge rivalry game. DJ Uiagalelei, are we really buying into that, you know, based on what we've seen from him? And then North Carolina, new quarterback this season, but that'll be the week before Notre Dame as well. So this was scale of 1 to 10, right? My confidence that they'll both be top 10. I'm going to go 7 on this because I am 9 confident that Notre Dame will be, but I am probably 5 or 6 confident that Florida State will be, because I could see them, you know, especially with Clemson in that mix, I could definitely see them losing that. And I could see them losing to either Miami or North Carolina as well. So I'm just a 7 confident that they'll both be in the top 10 for that game. Salty mentioning the 3 Floyds is close. I've never been there. I think that there's one in southern, like maybe Kalamazoo, the 3 Floyds, if I'm not mistaken, but he says he recommends Zombie Dust and Gumball Head. I have had the Gumball Head before. That's good. I haven't had it in a long time, but it's a nice one. I've tried that.
It's in Munster.
Oh, is that where the brewery is, in Munster, Indiana?
Yep.
I didn't realize that.
You could go. You could make a little trip out of that. Hit that, and then go up to Chicago one day.
Have to check that out. All right. So TNT is going to sublicense college football playoff games from ESPN over the next few years. They're going to broadcast 2 first-round games in 2024 and 2025 and air 2 first-round games and 2 quarterfinal games from 2026 through to 2028. So I guess considering TNT is on the verge of losing NBA rights, what do you think of this move? TNT sublicensing some college football playoff games from ESPN.
Yeah, I love this move. I think you have to be proactive when you're losing, you know, arguably your best sports show. Like Hockey Night on TNT is, I don't even know if that's Hockey Night is actually, I think, on a different stage. But anyways, like no one is getting hyped about, you know, the TNT hockey coverage. I think you have to do
except for DK.
Yeah, I think you have to do something, obviously, to stay proactive and not just wait for something to come to you. I would be really into this if it were like Charles Barkley and Shaq and stuff. But obviously, you're not going to be having NBA guys do, you know, college football type analysis. So I'd be curious to see what kind of crew they put together. And is Ernie Johnson still, you know, at the lead type situation? But I think I'm definitely going to watch. Let's put it like that, because I think TNT does a good job of putting out good quality content. And so I think their reputation will kind of continue to go on, and they'll do well in the college football world as well.
Yeah. I mean, there's already, you know, people, you sent me a tweet this afternoon about it, people joking around about, hey, inside the NBA crew, they don't have anything going on. Maybe Charles and Shaq and Kenny and Ernie will be, you know, doing some college football playoff pregame. I mean, they already jump over and do college basketball during March Madness. Why not? But, you know, it is interesting considering ESPN's the worldwide leader, and, you know, they basically are the bulk sports broadcaster, and they haven't even started the 12-team format, and they're already kind of, you know, shipping some of these games off. So, you know, how much it's going to matter, I don't know. I will be curious to see if TNT maybe tries to build something around this. They're not going to have anything during the regular season, which is kind of like what they do in March Madness for that matter. It's not like you see them carrying college basketball games during the season, but they've got a lot of stuff on, obviously, during the tournament. So it's going to be interesting. We all just want to find our playoff games, and I don't think it really necessarily matters exactly where it is. We've got more refreshment questions. Tommy wants to know if you like Guinness, do you like Monster? Would you be open to trying Gongster? Monster mixed with Guinness? Do you know what Monster is? I've never heard of that.
Yeah, Monster energy drink.
Oh, the energy drink. Gotcha.
Yeah, and so I do like Guinness. I'm more of a Red Bull Zero type of guy myself. I don't drink a lot of caffeine, coffee, like energy drinks. My mom always would get mad at me as a kid if I tried any of that, and so I never got into it. You know what I mean? It's never been a thing, and my body never. I actually get too jittery off of caffeine, or I'll start to crash towards the afternoon. So, got to stay away from it. But I went through a big Guinness phase. I still like Guinness. I think it's still, as long as it's fresh out of the tap, I think it's one of the best things you can drink off of tap. I've had it in Ireland before, so yeah, definitely love some Guinness.
When you had it in Ireland, does it taste considerably better? Like right there from
it's like almost Guinness I think the
brewery?
Best way to describe it is it's more like frothier. It's like thicker. It's more. It's not. It feels like. I think it's like I would compare it to like milk, like fresh milk. You know how it's a little bit thicker and that sort of stuff. And you got milk that's kind of sat for a while and it's more. I would say like watery. I think that's the best way to describe it. It just feels more full when you're in Ireland.
Is it cold or is it that room temperature?
Cold.
Garbage?
Cold.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
And you start to see all of like I don't know what it's called, but like you see all like the kind of caramel color swirling around in there as the Guinness is being poured. It's great.
Oh, Karen just putting up the Green Bush. That's a place that we go quite often. Beer and some barbecue. And that's actually, we were talking about, there's a place farther up called the Mitten in both Grand Rapids, and they've got a smaller Mitten in Saugatuck. It's pizza and beer. The one in Grand Rapids is the main one, and they turned a really old firehouse into a microbrew and pizza place. And they've got a lot of different kinds of pizzas. You can get a flight of different kinds of pizzas as well as your flights of beers, but it's all baseball themed inside. It's a really cool place. And some of the beers' names are baseball themed as well. That's our favorite place, but it's obviously a little bit farther away in Grand Rapids. But Green Bush is a place we could end up hitting this weekend.
We Are Not Marshall says the champagne and beer better get some love in this chat. He's talking about Guinness. Listen, brother, We Are Not Marshall.
We just gave it some love, right?
I am 100% in with you. Guinness is one of my favorite beers. I would say if I went to a bar, I have two options. I have a lighter option. I have a darker option. Guinness is my darker option. Side note, it really doesn't taste as dark as it looks for a lot of people out there. And then Blue Moon. Since we're more so in the summer right now, I like to get a Blue Moon with a fresh orange slice.
Yep, Blue Moon, nice, refreshing, blood orange. Yakida in Elkhart is actually another good place. They've got pizza too. It's a place that we go quite often. Sean Kelly, though, Sam Adams Summer Ale and a porch rocker is what he's saying. And Sam Adams is one of my favorites as well when I'm not doing the craft beer. Friendly reminder, hit that like button if you would. And if you don't subscribe to the Irish Breakdown podcast on Apple or Spotify, please do so because it helps us out greatly. Don't make us beg on this one. So, Jesse, some Notre Dame softball news today that came out of the blue. Fill in the blank. It's blank that after 23 seasons and a program record 882 career wins, Deanna Gump announced her retirement today as Notre Dame softball coach.
Surprising, but deserved. I don't think that if you asked many people, Deanna Gump was going to kind of show her hand or, potentially, tilt her hand that she was going to retire. So that aspect is definitely surprising. And then it's deserved at the same time because of what you talked about. She's got the most program wins. She is the model of consistency in terms of being a head coach, right? Never really rode the low waves. And obviously had some good and very talented teams still as well, but was a very consistent, head coach, right? And I think that is the thing that you ask for the most out of your head coach: consistency, and getting your players graduated
Right.
at the same time. So
Right.
I think that she was a model head coach, and Notre Dame softball is definitely going to miss her. And if you're a coach out there, I think she is someone that you strive to be like, right? Because she was so good for so long at Notre Dame.
Yeah, absolutely. It's shocking to me. Vince actually texted this morning. I was in the middle of something, and he texted, and I was like, "What? Deanna Gump? I mean, she's still young. She's right around my age. So it's like she's only in her mid-50s, and with the success that she's had with that program, she seemed like she was one of those coaches who was going to be there for at least another 10 years, if not 15. She became an assistant coach at Notre Dame in 1998, and I think she was an assistant for Liz Miller for 4 years, and then she takes over the program in 2002, and all she did was go to every NCAA tournament for the next 21 years. Now, of course, that excludes the COVID year. This year, though, excluding the COVID year, was the only time in her 23 years as head coach that she didn't go to the tournament. So like you talked about, no lows. I mean, that's the definition. You're in the tournament every single year. 692 winning percentage, was among the top 20 active coaches in the nation before she retired today. So I was just shocked to hear the news today when they announced it. Like think about this. Muffin McGraw retired a few years ago. Mike Bray, obviously, out after last year, and now Deanna Gump. Those three coaches all, leaving Notre Dame within the last, 4 years now, I guess. That's more than 80 years of coaching experience at Notre Dame combined with those three who are now all gone. That's just amazing. But just an amazing career that Deanna Gump had in her time at Notre Dame.
Yeah, I mean, to make the NCAA tournament literally every single time, right? And
yeah,
I don't know how many conference championships that she might have. I mean, I'm assuming if you're making the NCAA tournament, you have, a couple in there.
Seven Big East championships before they moved to the ACC.
So that's obviously a very impressive number. And in the 2001 season, they were 54-7, 54 wins as a head coach. That's pretty phenomenal. And I can't stop thinking of the word consistency, to have so many consecutive NCAA tournament appearances, to never really have a bad season or a down season is just truly incredible in my opinion.
No, absolutely. So, what do you think Gump's legacy is ultimately going to be?
That's a tough question. And I don't want to keep saying the same thing, but to me, again, it's like the legacy has to be the consistency, the ability to win every single year, to be competitive, in two conferences that are really good baseball, softball conferences, the Big East and the ACC. And again, the ability to make the tournament every single season. And I think the only knock that you would have, and I'm not trying to have a knock here, but it's just the big one, right? Like to have those sort of amount of consistent NCAA appearances,
well, yeah,
and never go on and win one.
Right. Unfortunately, they were in the regionals every year, and it's the same setup as baseball. Regional first, and then you win the regional, you go to the super regional, you win the super regional, you go to the World Series. Unfortunately, they were just never able to pull off one of those regional wins. That was the only thing. And I know that drove her, had to drive her crazy, to be in the tournament every single year and to not be able to win one of those things. But, again, you got to get there first. Right. And they were there. And, I know that there've been, some fan critics, message board critics and stuff like that over the course of her career, talking about, that that's obviously the biggest knock that you can talk about. But I think that, again, when you look at overall career defining legacy, first and foremost, a winner, 882 wins, the most the program has ever had. I mean, that's an amazing number to think about. Excuse me. She won at least 30 games in, every year but the COVID year and this year. They were still above 500 this year, even though they didn't make the NCAA tournament and they didn't get to 30 wins. But every other year, at least 30 wins, 7 Big East championships, 40 plus wins 13 times, including 4 times since they moved to the ACC. But I think along with winning, and Salty mentioned this as well, like she's someone who ran the program the right way. You talked about graduation. You never heard negative things said about her or the pro. I'm talking about big picture stuff.
Never character issues amongst the players that she recruited.
Fans will nitpick and stuff like that. Yeah, but none of the character type stuff, none of that kind of thing. And what I was saying with Salty is the community service stuff. The school gives out what they call the Notre Dame Trophy for community service every year. And her softball team took that honor 8 of the last 9 years. And a lot of that has to do with the strikeout cancer events. And, Brian had her on the last couple of years trying to help raise some money for the strikeout cancer event. Her daughter Tatum obviously was diagnosed with leukemia several years ago. And they have since raised several $100,000 that's gone to the South Bend Memorial Children's Hospital, for that, with that strikeout cancer event, so that's a big thing. And fortunately, her daughter Tatum, is in remission from, leukemia. But, again, when you talk about the legacy, I think that those two things, being in the NCAA tournament virtually every year and raising all that money for cancer research or, for the Children's Hospital that, stayed here in the community, hundreds of thousands of dollars that they were able to raise with that, I think is pretty amazing.
Yeah. And to me, that all goes back to my consistency answer. She was a consistent coach in terms of winning games. She was a consistent mentor of getting kids graduated and turning them into young adults. She was a consistent, member in the community in terms of her, volunteer time. And then she was a consistent member in terms of service, right? All of the money that she raised, for the cancer research and that sort of stuff, everything she did consistently. And it then the results proved it at the same time.
Yep, absolutely. So, when you're a coach who's able to rack up those kind of wins and have that kind of success, you got to go, just like Nick Saban at Alabama, you got to go out and find someone who's going to come in after them. Would you want to follow a coach who had that kind of success?
No, I wouldn't. And not just because of, the consistent NCAA tournament appearances and everything else, but just, again, she was a staple member of the Notre Dame community within the Notre Dame circles. Like, she is a tough person to replace outside of just the X's and O's of softball, right? Like a person of great character, a person that is ultimately super compassionate, literally everything that nice that you can say about a person. That's what she is outside of being, a good softball coach. And so I know I wouldn't want to because of that reason. The only way that you can follow it up is if you go to a super regional or you win a national championship, right? But anything less than that to me is just kind of falling short. And I don't think you're gonna live up to the what she has, kind of built and demanded for the Notre Dame softball coach going forward.
Yeah, it's tough. You never want to follow the coach. You want to follow the coach who follows the coach, or
right.
whatever occupation that you have to be in. You don't want to follow the legend. You want someone else, to have to kind of occupy that time first, and then you follow that person.
Because then you're the person that's like, okay, obviously the second person didn't achieve as much, and the third person gets a little bit more of a pass because they're like, well, they were better than 2,
right?
And they're getting closer to 1. So
yes, exactly. Like I still wouldn't want to be Kalen DeBoer, as successful as he was at Washington. I would not want to be him following Nick Saban at Alabama, and I wouldn't want to be Gerard Mayo following Bill Belichick in New England, and I wouldn't want to be whoever's following Deanna Gump here at Notre Dame. I can't imagine being able to perform at that level of excellence for 23 years, because there are very few coaches who have, and I mentioned a couple of them, Saban and Belichick. There are very few who are able to go that long. And I do have to think, like I talked about the fact that she's still, fairly young, only in her 50s. I do have to think that just that grind for that long, being in that profession, recruiting and, just going through the whole cycle and games and tournament. And then, like there's very little off season in anything these days. It's like, that does probably have to catch up with you at some point. Coaching is a profession that tends to age you, I think.
Yeah. And the thing is, you talked about being, can you imagine yourself being good at something like that for 23 straight years? I mean, the answer is no. I've been alive for 28 years, and I can't think of something I've been tremendously great at for 23 consecutive years. And then the flip side of that would be, outlook. What is something I would want to be good at or potentially good at for 23 straight years? And again, I don't even know what that would be. Like I don't want to be an engineer for 23 years. Like I don't know what that looks like. Like obviously, like being a good person, a good son, a good significant other, like all of that doesn't count to me. Like something
that's all subjective, right?
Yeah, like something of talent or skill or obtainable that you can actually get an end result, right? Like that's something of could I be the best NCAA football player for 23 years? No. Could I be, the best golfer, subpar golfer in Cleveland for 23 years? No. Like you can go down the list of things, and it's like I don't think that there's anything that I could do and be that good at for 23 straight years.
Right. I still, when I heard the news this morning, one of the first things that I thought about was back in the day, when like not the last radio station that I worked at, but back when I was at the ESPN affiliate here in town several years ago, would have Deanna Gump on the show from time to time, and we went through a stretch there where when she would come on, and we would do a little 80s Name That Tune contest, and it was like, it was like the old, I don't know if you've ever even seen Name That Tune, Jesse, but it's like, I can name that tune in, 5 seconds is what you would start. And then whoever you were playing against would say, I can name that tune in 4 seconds. And, like you'd see who could get it down. And, so like she and Terry Rooney, who was the pitching coach for the baseball team, came on one time and competed against each other. And she's so competitive that I can't remember I don't remember what the song was or what exactly happened, but she kind of blurted out something, because she was ticked off that she didn't win. She blurted out a word that you're not quite supposed to say on the air, but it was a lot of fun when we were doing the old 80s Name That Tune back in the days. So good times.
Is that your, you've been around Deanna Gump for a long time. And then John Gump, obviously
her husband
was a volunteer coach under the pulmonary coaching staff and ran, predominantly all the summer camps, baseball camps at Notre Dame. So I went to a lot of those camps growing up. I knew, John Gump pretty well. Is there a favorite memory you have of them? Is that your one? Is there other things that come to mind?
Yeah, I would say that for her, like with John, like when he was a volunteer with volunteer assistant with the baseball team, we would room together from time to time on the road. And there was, we've been talking about our favorite beverages. There was they won the Big East tournament, and and it was when it was out in New Jersey, and we were rooming together, and everyone, because we had to spend the night, there were no, we weren't chartering, so we had to spend the night in the hotel, get up early the next day to fly back to South Bend, and man, he wanted to just stay up all night, and I'm like, are you kidding? I can't do this, man. I can't do this. But those were good times back when
When
they
Notre
were
Dame was
winning
dominant
regularly.
in the Big East and they were winning a lot, I feel like there was a lot of good times
Yes,
amongst the masses of those
there were.
people.
There was. So, congratulations to Deanna Gump and her great career at Notre Dame, 882 wins, and of course, we wish her best in her retirement. So, Baltimore Ravens quarterback Jesse Lamar Jackson says he's lost weight this offseason in order to be more agile. His highest listed weight in his career was 230 pounds a couple of years ago. He wouldn't specify this week how much he's lost, but he was talking to reporters and he said, earlier this month that he was down to 205 pounds. So, do you buy or sell an NFL quarterback, especially one who runs as much as Jackson, weighing that little?
I'm going to have to say sell. I do think that it's kind of counterproductive, but Lamar Jackson knows his body better than me, right? Like maybe bulked up, the throwing mechanics didn't quite feel right, and like you were saying, he said he wants to kind of maybe lean out to be more agile and be better on his feet. If that were the case, I think Lamar Jackson would be better about taking less hits, knowing when to go down, when to step out of bounds. You know what I mean? Like you don't see Lamar Jackson ultimately get smoked by a tackle because he's so elusive, right? Like even if you're tackling him, you're only tackling half his body. You're maybe grabbing a leg. You're not just like, when's the last time you saw Lamar Jackson just get absolutely blown up, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't see it. And I think that goes back to his agileness and his athleticism. So I think he's going to find a way to get it done ultimately, but it's just so worrisome for a guy that wants to be so proactive on his feet to kind of not be as bulked up. Like I would feel if that were my franchise quarterback, I would feel a little hesitant if they came out and were like, Dak's losing weight because he wants to be more agile, right?
Yeah.
I get it. They're not the same quarterback, but I'm just saying if we're doing a comparison and, again, knowing my quarterback, a big part of his game is running, I would not like to see that he's actually basically debulking.
Well, and that's the thing is like we're talking about the NFL. It's one thing. 200, 205 is still pretty slight for a college quarterback. I would think that he would want to be at least 215 pounds. Like Riley Leonard was listed at 217 on the spring football roster, and looking at him, that still looks, a little bit thin to me, so I can't imagine Lamar Jackson down around 200, 205 pounds. I would not want my quarterback in that range. I would want him much closer to at least 215, 220. You've got to have at least that layer of armor on him. That just seems way too slim to me. And a sloppy Joe, he had a good, what's Michael saying? Maybe he won't run as much by design, and that's why he's losing weight. I mean, he says he's losing weight because he wants to be more agile and he's going to keep running. And like Sloppy Joe is saying, his problem was never agility. It's being accurate in games that matter. I mean, that's right. Once they fall behind, that's the big issue for him. It's can he pass? It's not can he run. I agree with that for sure. So fill in the blank. It's blank that the NFL is considering playing a game in Australia.
Meh. We talked about this, I think, maybe a few weeks ago. Like Australia as a vacation destination. Oh, sure. And I catch an NFL game. That's maybe my, team particularly that I root for. Great. But I'm not going out of my way to see the Commanders and Falcons in a game in Australia. You know what I mean? Like it's just not moving the needle for me. These international games really don't move the needle for me, but I understand the purpose. You're trying to grow the game. You're trying to reach a bigger audience, et cetera, and et cetera. And I think it would be great if my team, the Cowboys, ended up playing in London one year or Australia in one year. And, you and I make it a vacation or something like that. Like, yeah, that's great. But if your team's not playing in it, it just doesn't move the needle for me.
Yeah, that's, I think I said it when we were talking about the international games when the NFL announced them. It's just doesn't matter to me because so far I've never been to any of them. I'm just going to watch it on TV. If they're in Europe, it's going to be on at 9:30 in the morning. And that would be one thing that they would have to figure out if you're going to go to Australia. I mean, you're going to another hemisphere for one. And then you got, the massive time difference and just the whole thing getting over there. And and getting back. So, yeah, Tommy says only 15 hours ahead. I mean, it's the NFL wants to be international. I've said that I thought it would be, maybe pretty cool. Like if Notre Dame tried to play a game in Australia or something like that, there would be major logistics that you would have to figure out. And most likely whatever teams went over there would have to have a bye the next week, because of the long distance and all that, in the time difference and all that kind of stuff. But you're right. In general, the international stuff does not move the needle for me either. It's about the NFL trying to, just become more global and make more money around the world, not just the United States. Because, they are, after all, having a hard time making money here in the United States when they sell a couple Netflix Christmas Day games for $150 million. Feel sorry for the NFL. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Caitlin Clark led an 8-0 run to tie Indiana's game with Seattle last night with 5:39 to play, only to see her head coach, Christy Sides, sit her on the bench until the 3:13 mark, while Seattle went up 7 points en route to their win over Clark and the Fever.
Yeah, it's absolutely abysmal coaching at the end of the day. And it's funny that you asked this question because I watched the game. And the reason why I watched it is, one, because I wanted to see Caitlin Clark, and two, I had a parlay that included the Fever money line, and it was the last thing that needed for said parlay to hit. And guess who was extremely frustrated when Caitlin Clark came out and after this big run when there's 3 minutes left in the game, 5 minutes left in the game, 3 minutes by the time she comes back in. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're really gonna do this, my parlay is gonna hit, and I was pretty fired up, and then I instantly go to deep frustration because you're taking the not number one player in the league, but the number one draft pick in the league, the most polarizing player in your game right now, excuse me, out of the game. Like, it's just abysmal coaching. You can't say her conditioning's poor. To me, it's just there's got to be some sort of personal vendetta. It feels like
she's done it in some like they've only played 5 games so far, but almost all their games are on TV, and she's sat her for big chunks in the fourth quarter. I don't get what the strategy is supposed to be. I mean, they had the number 1 pick in the draft the last 2 years for a reason. They were a bad team. They hired this coach. Nobody's ever heard of Christy Sides before this year, and now she's making these idiotic decisions. If you're going to sit Caitlin Clark, sit her at the start of the fourth quarter. You've got the fourth quarter break. Sit her for the first minute or so of the fourth quarter, coming out of that commercial break. So you've got a natural built-in longer break, and then get her out there. She needs to be playing as much of the fourth quarter if possible. And, after she came back in, she had a couple of big step-back threes that I saw on the highlights. There's just no excuse for sitting that kind of player for 2.5 minutes when the game's on the line while the other team is taking the game back over again. There's no excuse for it. Jewel Lloyd, by the way, 32-11. She had a nice game last night. I don't know if you had any parlay on that.
I was I did not, but I was that was a fun game to watch because of Caitlin Clark, Skylar Diggins, and Jewel Lloyd all being, in that game. Yeah. I do have Jewel Lloyd on my fantasy team, though, so it was a great fantasy.
WNBA fantasy team. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, yep. Random league with some friends, but we're doing it.
Nice. All right. Well, that's going to do it for tonight. Hit that like button if you would. Enjoyed it tonight. As always, Jess, great questions in the we in, we out earlier. And we will wrap it up with that. Vince will be in tomorrow. We're scheduled for a 3-man show tomorrow. And on the docket, Top Gun Maverick conversation in tomorrow's Rapid Fire. So looking forward to that, to finally hearing what Jesse thought of Top Gun and Top Gun Maverick as we get ready for this Memorial Day weekend. Bring your A game tomorrow, Jess.
My A game will be brought.
All right. Sounds good. Again, hit that like button, and we will talk to you tomorrow. Appreciate you being here today. We will talk to you then. IB Nation Sports Talk.